This is Parent, Boss, Leader.
Parent, boss, leader.
And here's your host. She's a courageous voice for women, parents, and modern workforce leaders alike. She's a keynote speaker and proud mother of two, Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at ATR International, Laura R. Munson.
Hello and welcome to the show, Parent Boss Leader. We are an interactive podcast where I interview leaders across industries who share their incredible stories. I'm Laura Munson, your host. I'm Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at ATR International. We are headquartered in Santa Clara and we are a staffing and recruiting firm. Thank you for joining us today. If you like what you hear, please like and subscribe. Kia, excited to have you today. We're going to be speaking with you, Mr. Kia Mirsanai, who is an executive at Tandem Diabetes. An amazing background. Can't wait to hear about it. We're going to talk about your hiring approach, how you support your workforce, ideas digging into the whole hiring process, and learning a little bit more about your thoughts on the future workplace with artificial intelligence. Looking forward.
Same here, Laura. Thanks for having me, and I'm very excited for this time.
Thank you. Let's dive in. Can you share some of your key highlights and what led you to your current role at Tandem Diabetes?
Sure. It's so my journey was a kind of a fun and lengthy journey. It all started back in Iran, my home country. I was raised there. And at that time, I joined the automotive industry. It was really fun. In the automotive industry, I got, experience with designing products, testing products, product quality, mass production. A lot of fun. And I got to work with some of the world leaders like Renault, Nissan, those guys. And they had a way to educate you about quality, right? When you're driving your car, there are 20,000 different components that are working in harmony. You don't notice any of them,
yeah.
and all of that. So that was a lot of good experience. And then we decided to pack our bags, go to Australia, and help my wife go through her education. I found a job there in commercial printing, startup, really fun. And then as part of that transition, we decided to pack our bags again, come to the beautiful South California, San Diego, and continue my journey there. It was around that time that I felt like all of my commercial experience has been led to building new products, building more fun products, build technology and all of that. And then I was wondering, okay, so how can my experience help to improve people's lives? And I started looking around. And San Diego is an interesting hub for med device companies. So at that time, I joined a company called Becton Dickinson, their infusion segment. That was kind of introduction of me to medical devices. It was really fun because we are working with infusion pumps, and infusion pumps are used heavily in hospitals. They're highly regulated. So you can imagine, for someone like me, I just jumped into the deep side of the pool with medical device regulations, the standards and all. But what I found, and it was fascinating, was that a lot of the basics of creating high-quality products applies everywhere, including medical devices. So I had a really fun there. We launched a couple of really good products, and then I joined another San Diego startup, San Diego-based startup, actually Dexcom. Dexcom is one of those success stories for San Diego, where they build ICGM, integrated continuous glucose monitoring systems. And that has helped to improve people's life when they have type 1 and type 2. So that was really fun. It was interesting because I kind of joined my startup experience to all of the medical device experience I gained through BD. And then at that time, I saw another San Diego-based startup, Tandem
Mhm.
Diabetes Care. It's
Yeah.
fascinating how many success stories we have in San Diego about these startup companies. And I joined Tandem to help them to build the systems integration and test team. And it's been a great journey. Love what I'm doing, love the environment, and I love the people that I'm working with.
Love that. And I think it's so inspiring, even to me personally, hearing you as a husband supporting your wife, moving all the way to Sydney for her education. That's amazing and selfless. I bet that really has influenced even your perspective on life and who you are as a person, who you are as a leader. So I really want to applaud you for that. I think that's an example to me, to many people. So thank you for sharing about your career journey. And I think that makes you such an amazing contributor to your teams, having such robust background. I wanted to jump into a little bit about the hiring process too, as a leader. We had talked before about the importance of really tailoring job descriptions rather than using cookie cutter templates. Can you explain how this approach really benefits the hiring process and what steps you take as a hiring manager to tailor that job description?
That's a very good question, Laura. I think one thing that happens a lot, especially in the fast business, right? When if you're in a fast business, you're developing products, we are servicing customers.
Mhm.
Um, at some point, we realize that we have a gap. We have a gap in our organization. We need to go and hire.
Yeah.
Now, typically, what happens, we realize that gap because there's more work to be done than the people that are available. And that automatically leads to us to, okay, let's go and find one of those old job descriptions that we created some 3 years ago, pull it out, dust it and post it, and then hope that we get the right person, right? And I think, and
Yeah.
I've seen that over and over again, and that sometimes leads to an interesting situation because now that you've posted this job description, a lot of people will apply,
Hmm.
and and you have to go through that vetting process. So the time that you're actually putting into is actually more than what you hoped.
Yeah.
And what I've seen in some cases is that some teams they just give in. They're like, oh man, we can't find the ideal candidate. Just let's go hire one of the candidates, right?
Yeah.
So one thing that I always encourage the team is look at the position, look at the needs that you have, write them down. What are the needs you have? We need one more person to help us.
Mhm.
What skills do they need to have, right? What experience do they need to have? What soft skills do they need to have? Kind
Mhm.
of write those down, see what area of the organization needs reinforcement, and
Mhm.
then tailor the job description based on that. Like talk to the people through the job description. A lot
Yeah.
of people they don't want to waste their time, they don't want to waste your time, they want to read the job description. If they don't feel that it's really right for them, they won't even
Mhm.
apply. And some
Mhm.
people are skeptical, but they read the job description and they're like, oh my God, this is me.
Yeah.
And that encourages them to apply. So I think that's an important part from my perspective. And one thing that I do is I look at people's skills in kind of like a three-dimensional thing. So I'm going to share something with you. I did a formula. Like I don't think this is
Yep.
a standard formula written in a book, but the way that I look at it is that you have job skills, access, right? And those are like knowing what to do. So I'm going to use the example of moving dirt, right? Just something
Mhm.
completely untechnical. Everyone understands it. Job skills. You can move dirt with your hand, or you learn eventually to use a shovel, or at some point you learn to use some machinery, right?
Yep.
So those are kind of the job skills that you can have in that access.
Yep.
Then there is experience. How much real life experience do you have in using those skills? So someone comes to you and says, I know how to drive machinery because I just got my license.
Yep.
Okay, how many years of experience do you have in that, right? You kind of want to know that because some skills having them is great, But then, depending on the position that you're hiring, maybe you're open to someone who's just coming in, they're going to gain that experience in your company. Or sometimes you really want someone who can bring outside experience to teach the people within your team. So that's kind
Mm-hmm.
of like you have to decide where in that experience bar you want to be. And then the softer skills, knowing how to engage others. We sometimes forget about that, Laura, especially in the tech companies, especially in service companies. Sometimes we forget about the importance of that access.
How true.
Um, right? And you can hire someone who is very skilled, very experienced, comes in and creates a tantrum.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you
It's
don't want
true.
that.
Yep.
You don't want that, and I think that's the part that you have to again decide. And you when you're interviewing people, after all these interviews that I've done, I've met all sorts of different folks, right? We all love this example, right? The person who is perfect. They have all the skills, all the experience, and all the soft skills. I have not found that person yet, even looking at the mirror at myself, right? We all need development in some of these accesses.
In
Sometimes,
recruiting, we call them purple squirrels.
yeah,
That's who we call them.
purple skirts. I like it. You're not gonna find that person. You can search as long
Yes.
as you want. And and
Mm-hmm.
and the fun the other part is that you can see have all these different types of people. One thing that's important, and I keep reminding folks, is that there are no bad candidates. There are which candidate is right for the position that we need, right? You have to decide. Sometimes you have someone who's coming right out of the college. They have quite a
Mm-hmm.
few skills. They learn the stuff. They kind of fresh. They know everything about the tech and everything. They just don't have the experience, and they were not exposed to the corporate level engagement, right? They know how to deal with their friends. They know how to deal with some folks in the university, but they just don't know how to deal within a corporate environment.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you have the folks that just naturally, they're really good at engaging people. There's some of them out there, like you go to a party, there's just that magnet there that everyone just goes around them, and they
Yeah.
have some skills. These people, interview them, when I find them, I'm like gold, right? Because
Yeah.
experience can be gained, experience can be taught, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's when you have someone that has that base of softer skills and job skills, that's really good. Sometimes you meet these folks. So sometimes you see someone who has decent softer skills, right? They have some technical skills, but they're really experiencing what they're doing. So they will come to your company and they say, look, man, I don't know how
Mm-hmm.
to drive machinery, but I've been shoveling for 50 years, right? And there's nothing
Yep.
about shoveling that would surprise me.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you do need people like that in your team because they will come in and they kind of bring some experience to the team. Of course, that soft skills access is very important with those folks, right? You don't want to bring in someone here that has long experience of being a bad player within a team,
Yep.
right? That that
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't play well.
Yep.
So it's really you kind of trying to find what is the right position for you and what's the right balance.
This was such an engaging graphic that you shared, Kia. And I hope that hiring managers really take heed to what you're sharing. Because coming from the staffing industry at ATR International, we've partnered with thousands of hiring managers over the years. And what you're describing, the most successful partnerships are those managers who really sit and try to figure out what's needed up front, the technical skill, and then the soft skill is huge because you have a certain culture going on within an organization, and it has to be the soft skill to really fit into that as well. I thought your graphic was spot on, and I think it will be very valuable to folks who are viewing it. Yeah, we talked a little bit too about your approach to interviewing. It was kind of funny because you had mentioned that you use a podcast style interview system yourself where you're engaging. So, for people listening, would you mind giving us maybe a little bit of a template of how you interview from a first an interview to the end when you're making an offer? How does that look?
That's a very good question. The way that it typically works for me is I always love the talent acquisition team to always, they have the first discussions and first meetings, they do the first round of filtering, of course. And in many cases, my direct managers or directors, they meet with the person, they kind of make sure that this person, so they kind of vet that job skills and experience access really well. And I tend to ask them questions like try to get a feeling about the person. And then when it's kind of my time, I try to be as casual as possible during that because to me it's a conversation. To me, it's not a hiring event. Yeah, I really sometimes think about it as dating, right? You're dating
Mhm.
someone.
True.
You don't sit at a dating table and say, okay, now tell me about your experience about dating others. It
Yeah.
doesn't work that way. So, and I'm usually very upfront with the folks. I'm
Mhm.
usually very upfront that, hey, this is a 50-50 activity happening right now.
Mhm.
It's very important that I understand you so I can make
Mhm.
sure that you are the right fit for the organization. But
Mhm.
it's also very important for you to understand me, the position, the company, the team, to make sure that this is the right company for you to work in. Because
Mhm.
we want that relationship to be long lasting, right? We don't want
Mhm.
you to come in and get surprised, right? So I kind of set the tone that way. And I've seen a lot of times when I set the tone that way, a lot of people kind of relax a little bit. They're like, okay, let's have a conversation and not
Mhm.
talk about like, tell me about your journey. How did it go? Like just the same template that you're actually using here,
Yeah.
right? Tell me about your journey. How did it go? What excites you about the job? What excites you
Yeah.
about life? And I just give them a lot of time to ask me as many questions as they have. And I do sometimes even share a lot more information about the job, the company, the team with them at the beginning, at the upfront. So I know that they have a context in their mind. So when I'm asking, because sometimes we kind of like to probe people by
Mhm.
surprise to see, okay, would they respond to that probe the way that we like them
Yeah.
to do? But if you
Yeah.
don't put them in the context, they might have the knowledge, but they might
Yeah.
be responding correctly. So it's
Yeah.
a very chattery conversation. And there have been moments in the past that I had that conversation with someone, and in the end, I'm like, it it was great to know each other,
Yeah.
but we need another date.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I sometimes ask them, hey, can you come to the office? Let's meet. Let's go grab a
Yeah.
coffee together.
Yeah.
And kind of build that relationship. I'm like, okay, it feels like we have this common understanding that this is good
Yeah.
for both of us.
Yeah.
And then we kind of shake hands, let's do it. And what I've seen is in those situations, the post-interview process works even easier
Mhm.
because there less ambiguity, there's less back and forth, there's less
Mhm.
testing of each other. So that's what I typically use. As I said, it's just a simple conversation.
Mhm.
I treat it as a date.
Yeah.
And I try to be nice and I try to share as much information as I can and I try to be honest and true.
That is so it's such a good model. I laugh sometimes because in the past, it's there was sort of I suppose it's a culture of employers thinking if a candidate comes to this interview, it's assumed they want to work here. We assume you want this job. And that doesn't work today because even we've noticed in the staffing world, we can send candidates to some of the best names in the entire globe. But people are looking for connection. They need to connect with who they'll be reporting to. They want to make sure that the hiring manager who they're working with is collaborative, are meeting them halfway. So I love that you're setting that example and you're owning that piece of the interviewing process. Candidates have choices now. They want to work with people. They want to share their story. They want to be known. They want to connect. So 50-50, it's very well said, Kia. I think if hiring managers kind of approach interviews that way, there's a lot more success at the end of the day. Now, diving a little bit deeper into the interview side, we had talked before. We do a lot of video interviewing these days. A lot more people are working remote or there's flexible situations going on at the office. What is your take on how candidates should come dressed to the interview? What is your thought in that area as a hiring manager?
Well, if they're not wearing a $5,000 suit, that's not good. I'm just kidding. No, that's so it's
Good.
me, it's the act of preparation,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the act of preparation is very important. It tells
Mm-hmm.
you if the candidate is real, if the candidate
Mm-hmm.
is interested, and if they're, it kind of tells you about those ex skills and experiences that we're talking about. It kind of tells you about the softer skills as well. So
Yeah.
for me, I don't measure a candidate's act of, preparedness by
Mm-hmm.
what they wear.
Mm-hmm.
Because, wearing a nice shirt and putting a tie on and all of that, that probably takes 10 to 15 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I would prefer is I would prefer a candidate that they would go and research your company, research
Yep.
your products,
Well
uh,
said.
read about the job and all of that. And they come very prepared. They come and say, hey, I looked at your product. It's
Mm-hmm.
great. I have some questions here. How does your company approach situations like this?
Mm-hmm.
That tells me that that candidate really took this interview seriously and
Mm-hmm.
respectfully. That's what's
Yes.
important to me. They could be wearing a t-shirt, they could be wearing a top, it's the
Yeah.
whatever it makes them comfortable. It's who they are. Like we don't want them to fake from the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
right? To not be who they are. And so
Mm-hmm.
so one of the things for me is I really like people who come prepared.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and prepared for me is more about what research they've done than what they're wearing.
Yes. And I appreciate hearing your perspective because I think it really is different hiring managers, different styles. And I think you put people in a place of you want to see who they are, you want them to be real. And that helps people feel maybe less defensive coming in. Whereas we do interact with different hiring managers who really do expect full suit, dress for the job. And I think it's important also for candidates to really think about how they want to present themselves before going on to camera as well. You answered another question that I had a little bit, but if we can dig a little bit more, one of the first questions that you want to know is whether they actually research the company. Did they read the job description? That's one of the first things you look for. What else impresses you as a hiring manager when a candidate is in front of you?
I think so. It's the way that I think about it is, as I said, like have they done their research? Have they, understood what the product is? Have they understood what the position is? And then also, have they put their thoughts together about what is the job and what is the career that they want to have, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who they are. That's those are
Mm-hmm.
those are some of the key things. Like sometimes, I'm in an interview and I ask someone, you know, what are your super strengths? What are your strengths? What are the, and
Mm-hmm.
they kind of like it starts feeling like they've never thought about that, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's one of those things that hey, if you're going to an interview,
Mm-hmm.
think about what do you want out of this new position, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where do you want to be? What is the career path that you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to follow? Come have that plan in your mind because with that plan in your mind, you can ask me as an interviewer some good questions, right? You can
Mm-hmm.
ask me about, hey, Kia, in 5 years, where do you see my position to be? Hey,
Yeah.
Kia, success in this
Yeah.
position from your perspective. You can ask me
Mm-hmm.
some very good questions that will challenge me and it will keep
Mm-hmm.
me honest and it will keep
Mm-hmm.
me accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And also when I'm asking, questions, you can put your answers in the context of the career path that you want to have, right? Because again, success is not getting a job.
Yeah.
Success is getting the right job for you. There's so many jobs out.
Yes.
There's no shortage
Yes.
of jobs out there. So once you figure all of those out and you come to the interview prepared and fully in the space and aware,
Yeah.
I can tell you, Laura, it's funny. I can smell that from 5 cameras and 5 monitors away. I can
Yeah.
smell that if someone just came in and their whole mind is present,
Yeah.
right? Versus sometimes they just rush to the meeting and like, okay, what company am I
Yeah.
interviewing? Who
Who
are
are
you?
we?
So
Yeah.
I think those are the things that I really like and I really respect when I see in a candidate.
Yeah, I just think that you're giving advice right now to both hiring managers as they're interviewing and candidates. For hiring managers, you're kind of giving a secret looking glass into you can tell whether a candidate is going to be someone who shows up and is present. If they're able to do research about the company going into the interview, about to kind of form a guesstimate of what the position would be like, what they're looking for on a team, shows you a committed person opposed to someone like you mentioned. Wait, which company am I interviewing with right now? Well, who are we? And I think for candidates listening to that, we do have to put our best foot forward. Just because we get an interview doesn't mean you get the job, right? So I think it's just great advice all around. Let's switch a little bit to parenting now. As a parent, what kind of workplace environment do you hope to see in the future, especially considering rapid changes brought by AI and other technological advances?
That's a great question. It's Laura, it's honestly is one of my biggest dilemmas and concerns and dreams. It's all things meshed together. I have two little kids. I have two boys. I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old. So
Mhm.
by the time that they will join the job market, 15 years from now, um, it's very hard to imagine what the future is going to be today. Some 20, I'm gonna, expose my age here, but some,
Mhm.
30 years ago, we had no idea that people would have phones in their hands and they would be able to,
Right? Yep.
work remotely from home and there would be computers all over the place.
Mhm.
So how things are going to be in 15 years from now, obviously, I think, artificial intelligence is I don't think it's just a bubble that will burst. I think it's a
Mhm.
real we
Mhm.
are already seeing the impact of it. So it is
Mhm.
going to transform how we work. It's going to transform our societies. But I think what's the most important for me is at the end of the day, we are humans, right?
Mhm.
And we love our kids and, to be treated like humans, right? So that's, I
Mhm.
think, very important. I think as technology keeps taking over, we shouldn't forget people, right?
Mhm.
As the most valuable elements of the company. Yes,
Mhm.
there's a technology in the server room doing a bunch of ones and zeros, but
Mhm.
it's the people in the company who build this culture. It's the people in the company who build this path, right?
Mhm.
Not those machines that are punching ones and zeros. So I really hope that, in 20 years from now, my
Mhm.
kids are not, fighting against Terminators, in the office, but they're
Yeah.
really working in collaboration, working in harmony, right? I really think that we can design technology to be human friendly. That's
Mhm.
important. It's doable. It needs to
Yeah.
be intentional, but
Yeah.
it's very doable.
Well said. I laugh when you mentioned Terminators because when we had chatted a couple of weeks ago, I had asked you, what do you think the workplace is going to look like with all of the AI upon us? And we were laughing about Terminators. Humans are doing their work, looking around. We're here. But can you elaborate a little bit on your vision for a caring and supportive work environment where employees are seen as valuable individuals, even in the face of a very different looking world with AI? And I know we're speculating. We're all speculating right now about what the workplace is going to look like.
That it really goes back to the where we started from, where we're talking about when you are building your company, when you're building your organization, when you're hiring, be intentional, right? So I think what I really like to see is to see the leaders, they look at the landscape of what needs to be done in the company and mark the areas that they think, okay, technology is going to take that part. And I'm going to have humans that are going to take that part. I'm going to have customer service that's going to take care of my my people
Yep.
industry, and all of that. And do that intentionally, because when you do that intentionally, you can understand the interactions that are required between these. You can understand the interactions that are required between the technology and humans.
Yeah.
And it continues to show the value that your employees are bringing to you, regardless of how technologically advanced your company is. Because
Yeah.
there's still things that those humans are doing that those machines will never be able to or be capable of doing. So I think um, as long as there's an intentional design and architecture in how these jobs are separated, how these jobs are defined, and how they're respected, and how their values are seen, I
Yep.
think that's important.
Great. Last question, Kia. And it's been so informative and helpful, everything you've shared. What, based on your extensive experience, what advice could you give to other hiring managers looking to improve their hiring practice to create a more inclusive and effective team?
That's a very good question. I think I really like it when organizations are architected intentionally.
Hmm.
That's the first thing that I would suggest anyone, right? If you're building an organization, if you're trying to hire, first look at your organization's architecture, right?
Hmm.
What are the different jobs that your organization is supposed to do?
Hmm.
And what type of people do you need in each branch of your organization to do the
Hmm.
job correctly and rightfully, right?
Okay.
That's step one,
Yeah.
awareness, situation awareness. You need to know what's
Hmm.
going on. You need to have an intention. Then look at, the people that you have and compare that to your architecture, and
Hmm.
then identify the areas of the gap. You
Hmm.
will identify areas of skill gaps. We talked
Hmm.
about it. You will identify areas of experience gap, and you
Hmm.
will probably most likely identify areas of soft skills gaps.
Hmm.
Write them down. Sometimes you can't fill all of those gaps in one person.
Hmm.
As we talked about it, what was it, the purplest girl or the
The
pinkest girl?
purple squirrel. That's right.
Because you can't find those purple scrolls out there. So
Yeah.
you have to really look at that gap and say, okay, I have to now break this gap down to 2 or 3 or 4 people, right? I have to hire someone with some particular technology related skills. I need to have
Hmm.
someone with a lot of experience who will come in and teach my company how others have been doing this job. And I need someone who can come and mesh the people together, hold them
Hmm.
together, and kind of, define those people and then start hiring them. Once you take that approach, I think you will be successful. But if you go on the reverse side of saying, I have 50 people, I need 55 people, I'm going to go hire 5 more people, then that's typically, I think you will end up, copy pasting what you hired in the past.
Hmm.
Doesn't bring in diversity. That doesn't bring in, change, right?
Hmm.
And that doesn't bring in excitement to your company.
Hmm.
So that's the little, advice that I can share.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I cannot wait until this podcast comes out. So many valuable insights. I think you've really created an excellent template for hiring managers in general to level up in certain areas and really take some key nuggets that you've shared into the hiring, interviewing process. Because often you're expert in your role, expert, say in quality, engineering, whatever it is, interviewing sort of a niche area where it may not be the native tongue for many people. So thank you. Great insights and really fascinating to see where our world's going to go with AI as well. Great having you, Kia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. And I really appreciate you and the time that you put into this. And I'm also very excited for this to go out. Thank you for
Mhm.
your time.
Great. And for those listening, please like and subscribe. Follow us for adventures in the corporate world, leaders sharing their amazing stories.